Well, good afternoon. I am Dr. Contrast, and we are live. Thank goodness we are actually got to the point where we're actually live. And before I begin my stream here today of the show, I just want to express my sincere thanks to all of you, for example, over the past 3 weeks that had endured the delay in getting this program put together today. And for those of you, for example, that expressed some concerns over the past 2 to 3 weeks with my wife's medical condition, I really sincerely appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to drop a note and wishing us well. And to this day, recovering very slowly. It was a very intense time for 3 weeks. I had no idea that situation that she was going through was so severe. But nonetheless, was taken care of. Medication is doing very well. Everything's been stabilizing so far. It's a very slow process, but she's doing much better. And again, my sincere thanks to all of you for your patience with me. And I've been looking forward to this one for about the last month or so. So again, thank you again for your patience for me getting this program put together. And I think you'll find it to be very interesting. Hey, hello, Terrace, how are you? It's good to have you on board. How have you been? Just doing well, I'm sure. But just to carry on the conversation here, I've been looking forward to doing this program for quite some time as a follow-up after the product design program we did. I think there's something about this process you'll find to be hopefully very intriguing and very rewarding when it comes to developing newness and form studies and shape varieties and vocabulary of design as you go through it all. So it really, let me give you a little bit of histrionics about why this program, to me, I think might have some impact on your approach to design thinking or problem solving. I entitled it Empathic Architecture in the Third Dimension. And the reason being was I was invited years ago. I was the director of the design program at the Cleveland Institute of Art for about 8 to 9 years. And during that process, I was the director of the industrial design program and the architectural program. And lo and behold, during that tenure of time, the Cleveland Institute of Art was told, our message by the group of law firm students and directors of the law school at Case Western University, that Frank Gehry had been hired to do the new law building on campus. But they needed someone to interpret some of the sketch work and some of the ideation work that he was going to go through. Unbeknownst to me, for example, he was a brilliant, very elusive and lucid individual, but he has a staff of people that are structural engineers and topographers and individuals in engineering and so forth that would take care of that. But he had very few people on his staff that could translate design studies or as illustrations. He did not draw. He was not one that was known for drawing. He was much more an empathic individual, very emotional, kind of looking at, and I'll show you a technique here in a moment as to how he thought. But they contacted me, and lo and behold, I was selected to be part of that team process. So it's quite a rich and very enriching process for about maybe 6 to 8 months of working with that team and going through the process here. So the reason for that the show today and this presentation is to bring back that memory to hopefully help you in terms of developing your thinking process and going in. And I know, please don't forgive me, I didn't mean to be insulting, but to enhance your thinking process as opposed to taking the typical approach to problem solving. So often we get caught up in just doing sketches and laying down ideas. And from my point of view, and I'll be very, very transparent here, there are times I go through some of the systems, I look back and it's very, very much similar. It's very likable, it's friendly, and every now and then you have to break out of that whole context and break into new things. And I think this process will show you how to do that. And let me show you again. I'm going to start here today the stream by showing you how Frank Gehry really worked. He came into the room and walked around the table and had no pen in hand and just picked up a sheet of paper. He picked up a sheet of paper like this, and he just started to do this. He just took a piece of paper and crumpled it and laid it down on the board. And all of a sudden, he started to move it around. You just take it and stand it up and look at it like that. You look at it like this. Maybe it's an elevation. Then you turn it upside down. Maybe it's that kind of an approach. So he just kept looking at sculpture like this. It was a paper-generated piece. And the interesting thing about him, when you walk around the room, it does say it's in this view here, for example. And let me show you what I'm looking at. As far as elevation goes, that elevation is starting to look like that. And if you look at it in side view, that's exactly what that thing is doing. It's just kind of a shape unto itself. And so when you look at that, you go around and you want to move around it, and you say, oh, right, this is interesting. Maybe this portion right here could be a wing or an extension of some sort. This shape in here could be glass or maybe transparent. This could be an overhang form of some sort of maybe cement or brick or a facade of some sort, maybe aluminum. And then inside that was a galley space, for example, where you can actually display some of the work. So this is how he started to work with this thing. It was absolutely fascinating to watch him walk around it. I mean, he would just do that. And that's how that program, that case law building started. It was a very empathic at the paper. Yeah, I mean, you talk about that's interesting, Terrace. It was very unique in terms of not getting caught up in traditional architecture. And let me just inject this thought for a moment here. It's a very intriguing method. You're right, Terrace, because what it does for us is two things. Number one, it opens up the floodgate of creativity. Number two, it teaches us about sensitivities to sensitive and making decisions. How to take a shape like this and manufacture it into some sort of a manufactured piece, like a piece of architecture. I've also used this technique in product design. I've used it in architecture, obviously, automotive design, and interior space design. It's universal. But the shocker was how he walked around this and looked at this stuff and said, well, these things can be possible. And a very intriguing approach. And it really, for me, I never forgot that experience, because what it did to me was, wow, what a neat way to use empathy in a different format. Now, we're used to empathy from an automobile training, using content creating and developing strikes, or also like we did in that product design approach on Terrace, where we actually just did strikes and converted that into a product design. That's pretty typical. It's also extremely intriguing, and it's also very, very powerful. But this method is tried and true for just developing shape and surface and developing new things that could be converted into architecture in this case. So that's how we started. So what I did is this. I did my homework over the last few weeks. And again, Terrace, thank you so much for the time you took to drop a note off during my wife's condition over the last 3 weeks. It was really a terrifying 3 to 4 week time session here. When we discovered what that difficulty was, I just about fainted, and was relieved to know that the technicians went in and solved that problem. She's improving slowly, but getting so much better. And again, thank you for being patient, number one. Number two, your kindness in generating a note to my attention, and thank you. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. Means a lot. You mean a lot to me from the point of view of being a really young, great talent, and we're going to keep that moving here. And as far as relationships go, it's solid. So here we go. That's it. That's how he works. I mean, again, moving it around. It's just very intriguing how the whole thing begins to open. Look at that. Things change, for example, dramatically. And what I love about the paper portion of it, let me just set the stop over here. What I love about the paper side, look at the shadows it generates. Again, white paper on a light source, for example, look how you develop, you can see shape, for example. This whole long expanse could be a promenade area. This could be an attention to detail, maybe another offshoot of the building. That could be a skylight of some sort. That's the kind of thinking that it really, really does well. So, oh, yeah, by the way, thanks so much, Aunt Terrace. Yeah, she is doing on demand much, much better. Slow, but better. So thank you. And again, I hope you can see, I'm sure you do, the asset of this whole process beginning to take place in terms of actually, and a nice way of saying this also is what it does for us is it really challenges us to think, okay, you've got a process here. How are you going to convert it? What materials are you going to assign to it? How do you see the shapes coming together? Is it organic? Is it sheer? Is it a combination of both? So that whole idea of just opening up the envelope of newness and ingenuity is just fascinating to me. And it's always kept us alive. And I think you'll understand this from my point of view, to you, and everyone else who's watching here, for example, in the stream today, that what it does for you is it just opens up the richness of your creative skills. You're no longer locked into doing the same old thing the same old way. It's a nice approach to taking things and taking a business here. So all that to say that I've done some things here. That's how we worked. And I've done some things, let me put this aside for a moment here, and I've done some things over the past few weeks. In fact, I did this 3 weeks ago. I did a series of Empathic paper sculptures for us to evaluate, and I'm going to start, I've got about maybe 6 to go through here. I'm going to bring them up on the table here. I'm going to show you how, here's number one. The first one I did was this guy. And it's just kind of an interesting nothing, but when you turn it, let me put it on its elevation. On its side, that's what it began to look like that. That's ground level right there. And if I could hold this down for a moment here, what we're looking at, for example, is notice how the shadows play off this whole shape. Let me just stand it up here for a second. And what happens is, when I lay that down in this view, again, this would be the foot, this large sweep, this large curve in here is a very prominent area to look at here, into a very large space here. So breaking down into 1, 2, 3, 4 shapes, and then beginning to fracture that a little bit was interesting. So that was number one in terms of putting it together. So this is how it actually stood up like so. It was more of a, let me show you this. Let me change over here. I've got these sheets put together. Hold on just for a moment. This is what that first one looked like. Let me get this out of the way, and we'll put that right there. That first sketch, for example, I took a photograph of that in this mode right here. So you can see it, for example, Terrace. It was in that mode right there. That's how it sat. Okay, now, let's put that aside for a moment. Let's get these out of the way. Oh, a question here. Does this method of empathy, based on a solid object as starting point, differ from all the other methods such as grand strikes? Yes, it is. It's a whole different approach to it. Quite honestly, at Terrace, and the real direct answer to that is it's different because now it's more sculptural. It's in the third dimension now. You begin to see things that cause us to make decisions that are different than doing an empathy strike. Empathy strike is very much it's a flat approach, but there's measure to it, but it doesn't have the same overall impact that a sculptor does. That third dimension gives you the idea of saying, oh, could it be? What if? And so forth. So it changes its character all the way through here. So I hope that answers your question. Is that a good way to answer it, hopefully? So it does offer a much different approach because it's still abstract shapes, but it's in that third dimension that causes us to see surface instantly, and we can make decisions on that. So I'm going to stop over for a moment and I'll adjust your. What do you think? Does that help? Answer your question? Let me stop here and just make sure we don't go too quickly here with this guy. Now I just took each one of these, I've gone through it, for example, I photographed each one of these paper sculptures or empathy pieces that I did, and I'm going to attempt to kind of describe to you just exactly how this works. So there's the first one we did, we just showed you, that first one, that's number one. What I did was break it down to, and I want to be very careful and not to just illusion you. This is a very sculptural piece, obviously. Very round in some areas here. We notice that radius in here, and that strong pediment of that foot into a long promenade area here, breaking it down. But what I did was, in each one you'll see here, I broke them down into what are the planes doing? For example, what is this guy doing here? So these are very stealth-like or very sheer, but I'm not saying these are the end final product. I'm just breaking it down into shapes that I see inside this form. For example, the foot. Could that be an entry area, and into a promenade or a gallery area, and into another additional building here, or a footprint set? Maybe it floats. So those are the things I'm making certain of. Now, as we go through each one of these guys. Hey, Dakota, how are you? Good to see you, Chief. I can't stream today, but we'll watch it. Hey, good deal. Hope you're doing well, Dakota. I'll try to contact you later on today, too, to chat on you. So hope everything's well. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great day. And be sure to watch it later. Hopefully it'll be of some help to you. So, again, it's very organic in their areas, and I took these shapes, for example, this form here into that, and then into that split line, and then this shape here into that area here. So breaking it down to objects or block forms helped me to see what the shapes were doing. So now, with that thought in mind, also, that gives me the opportunity now to come back and revise these. Now that I've got it down like sketch one, there's first variation, second variation, getting a little simpler with it, and then extending that area here and kind of combining those shapes together, that footament. Then the last one, I just inverted it, turned it around, and flipped the thing upside down and got the same. Look at the circumstances that change here. All of a sudden, there's a lot of character in these things. And again, we'll be very careful to not stress the fact that we're not looking at something that's stealth-like. This is nothing more than breaking the planes down for the benefit of beginning to massage them and change them as we go through the process from one to the other. So this is number one, very interesting set of circumstances. And we'll show you later on today how we took some of these pieces and begin to embellish and take advantage of that concept we're just talking about here. So this is number one. I'm running out of space here. Let's do this. I'll just kind of stack these up. There's one. Now the second one I did was this one. This is the same set of circumstances. I took a photograph. This is number two. Where was I here? Yeah, this is number two. There it is. And there it is in plan. Let me get this out of the way here. There it is in plan view, but there it is in side view. Notice how when you put that down in side view, there's a very large, very strong operation here in terms of that radius of that fillet into another floater behind it all. So if you look at these sketches that I did in translation, there it is as I'd seen it. And this is what it looked like from a direct elevation. Notice this form right here is very strong. And again, this little cantilever over the top of that. Then this little appendage out front. So I condensed that by looking at this shape, that area there. This portion right here became that portion right there. Then we kind of dropped that in over the top of that shape, and then took this shelf right here and added that onto it, and then extended that portion out in here. So, and then putting a footprint on it, and again, still had that same, I took this there's a little shape in through here, a little shadow area. That became a footprint or a grounding element here. Sketch number two. And again, notice, I really can't stress enough how each one of these sketches, even though they're sheer looking at a very hard edge, and as we go through the process, next week we'll start to massage these things and move into more direction of softer, sharper, change the character such so we've got a real good anthem to work with here. So, next. Second one, look, I took advantage of, this is it right here, this second sketch. there's that parabolic curve right there and brought that all together. This shape comes off of that form right there, right through that whole shape. Then we added this little plate down below here, which is this extra section through into here. Then that kind of eliminated that cover altogether. Didn't need that. Then I came back again with this whole tier up on top and put a little ladder to it, and then extended that tail out with some sort of a little piece of kind of embellishment here. The last one again was turning it upside down, where I took that same shape and just actually flipped it and got this shape, the parabolic curve to go upside down on me and change some of the character. For example, if I can do it here upside down by doing that, and all of a sudden everything just changed dramatically. Just incredible how that whole thing put together. So what I'm getting at is too, sorry for the fact that, for example, there's a lot of in and out on this stuff here, but this inversion gave me that whole portion, for example, upside down. It gave me this portion here, up, and then again, simplified the shapes and forms. And again, sort of being redundant, each one of these shapes, some are round, some are, but the most of it were very sheer, very stiff. But the idea behind it all, for coming back in and saying, all right, now we can take that same set of circumstances, those basic themes, and begin to massage them and do a little bit more uniqueness with them. Maybe they soften some things up, depending on where the winter comes up. And hopefully by the end of the day today, we'll have a chance to have you all take a look at these sketches and say, okay, we kind of prefer this, or that. I'm not really going to make a selection here in terms of what my favorites are. I'd rather have the audience participation and say, you know, this is interesting. These guys are pretty unique. This I would not do, that I would do. And the idea behind it all is I want to make this into a process where the next 3 or 4 sessions we actually take this thing and develop it further into a nice set of really final architectural sketches, thumbnail sketches, and then some color studies and perspective. So that was element number 2. Let me get this out of the way here and I'll move along very quickly. Element number 2. Now the third one was this guy. And then the third piece was here. Now notice here it is in photograph. Look at the shapes that are generating here. You've got this form into that little curved form in here, and then into this whole piece, this barrier piece out front that's doing this, and then again floating into a drop and into a shape. Notice now the sketches. Look at now that shape right there became part of that form there, became that form there. Different form of looking at it, and again coming out of that with this shape here, that wedge or triangle out of that area. And again, that little extension down below, just dropping it and then putting that foot together with it and putting it all together. The original sculpture gives you a raw forms and you can interpret the surface character. Yeah, that's great. Well said. By the way, too, am I explaining this stuff hopefully okay and not mystifying it or making it difficult to comprehend? The whole key to this whole first presentation in the project today is this, is to take that abstract sculpture to 3rd dimension in architecture, break it down in shapes or faceted planes, and then begin to slowly massage that into a series of development sketches that turn into a really, hopefully, a neat piece of architectural study piece here. So, does that make sense? Hopefully, let me know if I'm making clear, good decisions here. I don't want to confuse anybody. I want to keep it as simple as I possibly can, and it's an extremely direct, really direct approach to problem solving, and it opens up. I mean, when I went through these things, I thought, wow, this is fun. That's another thing about being creative. It should be fun. If it becomes a drudgery, don't bother with it. It should open us up, should free us, and make us really, but prevent us from becoming discouraged, but encourage us to make new decisions and open up our mind to see different things. So there's number 1. Second one, notice I really condensed it now. I took that shape, this form right here, that teardrop came right in through here. That form right there became part of that process. Again, that gate could be an attention. In a gallery, this could be all open space in there. I don't know, that little triangle right in there could have been open space, and then these 2 spars support that part. And then again, down to some sort of a ground base, that could be an entry area or an egress area. Then again, did the same thing with this one, turned it upside down, and look what I got. I mean, just amazing. I took this shape, and flipped it upside down. In fact, where's number 3 here? Let me bring in the play here. There it is. Here's the third one right here. There it is. That's a plan view, but look at the side view. Again, this is where that all came together. That's what that side view was looking like. And again, if you can see it in the form here above the sketch, let me move the sketch up a little bit. There it is there, and here it is, the empathy piece. Look at the relationships we're getting there from one to the other. A lot of surface work in there being done. Just grounding it out a little bit more, and just interesting things. So there's 3. This is number 3. Again, A, B, and C. Just looking at variations on it again. Trying to break those shapes down into elements of substance that we can work with and begin to massage them as we go. So that was number 3. Let me put this over the way here. And let's see. That's element number 3. Let me get these out of the way. Put this over here. And now, this is number 4. Let's go to number 4 here. Let me get these out of the way. Thank you. Number 4 is this guy right here. Interesting how this one, all of a sudden, there it is in plan view. But again, look at the side view in this thing. And again, and there's a photograph here. Look at that shape, that form right there becomes that form right there. Let me just move that over just a bit, then move this up and out of the way. Let's get that up, and then there it is. There it is right there. So there's the elevation we're looking at in terms of what I did from that strike. This one, from there to there. And then again, taking advantage of that strike by going back in and saying, all right, let's do this. Here's number 1. Let's move this out of the way. Pardon me, thank you. Get these straightened up. There's number 1. Again, that shape became that form. That little addition here, maybe an extension of the building. So this may be an open space. That shape right in through here, maybe that form right here becomes part of that area right in through here. And then all of a sudden, we go back into that little tail side. I just modified this. I cut that off, and it's modified. I use that shape and that shape, that dart right there to bring that whole form together. I'm really not. I'm not stating here by any means that all these are favorites. These are just interpretations. And my task now, and working with you from week to week here, is to break it all down and find a series of selections that really begin to hum in terms of making a real good, strong statement here. Number 2, again, notice I took that same sketch, I took that straight bone line right there and broke it, bone line and broke it. And I added that little tail action right here, that section right here, it becomes that portion right there. Underneath, you can't see it, but it's in shadow down below here. And that floats up and backs down again, floats up, backs down again, and that whole tail section became part of that process. So this study number 2. And again, what happens when you invert it? This was interesting. When you inverted it, all of a sudden the whole thing changed. Instead of having this approach to it, for example, where we saw it like that, by turning it upside down and looking at it like that, all of a sudden really things change. Now I could go back in and, for example, and look at this form here, and this could go which means, let me put this out of the way here. This could go softer, but again, the idea of having these 2 modules connected with a sky bridge of some sort was, to me, pretty intriguing. So let me stop right there for a second, Antares. I really need your help. How are we doing here? Am I hopefully keeping this pretty compact in terms of understanding? Again, initial sculpture, translation. Not necessarily sheer, not necessarily all just stealth, but again, breaking it down into planes to begin to utilize as a sense of series to develop the shapes and surfaces in a final architectural piece. Let me stop right here for a moment and just give you guys a break to kind of tune in and say, yeah, you're doing okay, or else shut up, or you're going too fast here. So I don't want to speed it up here, but again, very intriguing set of circumstances to work with. I've used it over the years. I'm always a big fan of it, especially in architecture. I've used that, for example, the Frank Gehry experience is one thing. The interesting thing is how it all comes together in terms of creating newness without us forcing it. How many of you, for example, let me just stop for a moment here. How many of you, and I'm guilty of this, you find ourselves doing the same thing over and over again. You've got favorite shapes, favorite forms, favorite views. That's all fine. But when it comes to developing a real target with your client base, it's always good to have a newness about yourself that they can't second guess you or predict where you're going to go. This tool, along with empathy and the flat dimensions with the content creator, are phenomenal. I mean, it just changes everything. So I'm really intrigued by the fact that we're doing this project. And we're going to finalize some pretty cool stuff. We're going to go back, and when we're all said, maybe 3 or 4 weeks out, we'll go back and see the final piece and bring it back to the one we selected and the empathy architectural 3rd dimension. Really cool stuff. So here's number 4, and here's number 4 again. That was it, looking at all 3 variations. Again, breaking shape down, that surface to that surface. And again, getting a little shearer with it. It took that same form, and then just faceted it. And it's there, and there. There, and there. Just making changes to see things go here. So, yeah, that is pretty cool, isn't it, Antares? I mean, it takes a lot of the pressure off of us about trying to find something really different and unique. Let the paper do the work for us, and then make the decisions in that sculpture to make it become transferable. So there we go. Now, what's happening next is this. I gave up on, I didn't give up on this, but those were the 4, I did 4 basic studies 3 weeks ago, and I held them back because of the difficulty with the medical emergency. Didn't get a chance to explain them all. So over the last few days, since we're going to go back on stream here, I went into this set of series. I did a series of little thumbnail sketches based on these. This is interesting. Number 5 and number 6. This is number 6. Look at this. This is really interesting. I took a piece of sculpture of paper here, and then this is number 6. There it is in the plan view. Let me just lay that out here for a second here. There it is in the plan view. But then when you turn it sideways, look what begins to happen here. Let's get this guy to kind of operate. Where's here? There it is. When you look at it from the side view, look what this guy starts to do. There it is. Let me bring it down on scale here. Look at that. Look at that elevation. How that again in an elevation, we're looking at the very strong triangle up on top. This wedge on the side here, and this very vertical tail form over here. This addition. But again, I took this again another same just using paper, and in this case using folds. And when I came up with was this. I mean that's what it looked like. Now in the plan view, I didn't get to the plan view yet. I'm just looking at elevations. So there it is, for example. Let me get this out of the way here, and we'll just make sure there's some real estate to work with here. So, based on that shot right there that we just looked at, this supposed elevation, that piece right there, I went ahead and said, okay, why don't I translate that into some sort of a third-dimensional piece, in an architectural piece. So I'm going to throw a series of sketches. Here's what I refer to, studies on number 6. This is sculpture number 6. Again, notice, very strong line here, and then what I did was this. I started here with this. Let me show you another again. Another elevation. This is where I started right here. Again, so I get this. I know it. It's right about. That's it right there. So once I started here, there was number 1, so to speak, in terms of what that shape was doing. And so I took that form and said, all right, what if I did this? What if I just this first sketch on top was this translation in that view right there. So there it is, number 1. There's that strong triangle here. There's that long slope line that came up all the way behind the shape here. This whole strong, very strong slope line came up all the way through the form. Let's see, let me kind of stop. I got a question here. To what extent are you designing while folding the paper, and how much of it is right? In all sincerity, Denteris, it's all random. This is these folds and everything are all random. There's nothing intentional here in terms of just making folds, and also the other pieces are just crumpling paper and laying it down and setting it up and say, that's it. Nothing's really predicted here. I'm just folding it. Really not saying design at all. It's just meant letting the paper to design it for me. Does that help to answer your question before I go any further here? Hopefully that's clarifying it for you a little bit. Good. So these are the sketches based on that number 6, where I just kind of flipped it around a little bit and did some really interesting things here. So it started there with number 6, and that was interesting how, again, look, variation 1, same thing, long span, and then all of a sudden really kind of compressing the whole thing and stretching it a little bit, which gives you the fluidity to do so, which is all part of the process. Again, variations on number 6, and again, what we're looking at is that elevation right there is what we're dealing with. Again, there it is right there. And again, the other approach up on top, this first sketch here, was again looking at it from that point of view, where you've got this very long straight drive line coming up, and again, that wing right there is this portion right here. So again, notice the idea there is you start in one direction and you can flip it upside down or maneuver it in such a fashion. In fact, there are some things here, when you look at it from that point of view, look at this. I mean, you get this into organized. Look, if you look at that and get that down on ground line, look at those shapes, how they begin to move dramatically here and just open up things. You can actually, when you set that up, it's a whole different set of circumstances. Really intriguing process to work with. And I think that's part of the intrigue and the fun for me, is it opens things up in terms of being extremely lucid, helpful, and without question, just really unique stuff here. So there's a family of forms here on variation number 6. And I'm going to go any further here. That's 6. And I moved on here. Now, I'm going back to, after the final 6 pieces are done, I don't know if I showed you number 5 yet. It might be coming up a little bit here. So if that's it, there's number 6 variations. I went back to number 1, which was this guy right here. The first study we did, which is, I think, right here. This is number 1. I went back to that guy and began to look at it from the point of view of, what if I take some sketches here? I went back to number 1 and began to refine this form. It actually stood up like so. There it is in the plan view. There it was in the elevation, so to speak. And then these sketches were coming about as a result of that piece. And when I go back to this in just a moment here, and we'll move around here. When I go back to number 1, there it is. There's number 1 in terms of where we started. Very sheer, very organic. But again, going back to, again, maybe facelifting this thing, maybe we take this shape. Let's bring this up here for a moment here. When we take this shape here and begin to develop a very round form in here that kind of opens that up a little bit and take advantage of being a little bit more of a stretch to make this thing function properly for us. So let's get that out of the way for just a moment. Notice what I've done here. Again, it's kept the footprint, but it really took that whole shape right here, that whole nose cone, so to speak, opened that up and just brought that form right up and into a very large curvilinear shape, which is reflected right here. So it's this into this into this. Whole different approach to it. So looking at, again, how we got the shear surface to work, now blending them and massaging them from these passes here, just to look at them very briefly. Let me put these back in order here so I can get them out of line. And here, this size number one. Huh? Again, no, a little clumsy here as far as scale goes. And what do you do with these areas here is back in prime? Maybe there's a big lawn space or a garden space up on top of that platform here. Let's get these into all of it in the same page. There we go. So there's the first variation. Now number two, maybe taking that shape and just stretching a little bit more, just pulling it over and getting this glass prominent to come out of this shape here and then pushing underneath that envelope and getting this to function nicely and then coming out of it in a nice little prop. Maybe that's just enough of it here to end it. So that was the second variation, which I thought was a lot smoother looking, a lot more aerodynamic and more architecturally solid. Third phase, taking advantage of this shape and really getting a very, very low profile with it. Again, same shape underneath. This becomes an aperture. Maybe that's all glass or transparent. And a support piece underneath might be a walkway. Then a terrace area up behind that shape. And then planting it, and again, planting it. Again, really intriguing how it is to me, that you take that sheer start where we're with the number one, the first paper sculpture, and begin to look at it again and see certain things in it that you didn't see the first time around. Now, let me stop right there. And Terrace, truth be spoken, is this making sense? Helping? It's developmental. It's transferable. Because you start with a paper sculpture, it does not necessarily mean that you're doing the same thing or have to follow that verbatim. That gave you the start. Then you look into it and begin to analyze it for what it's worth and begin to really develop a lot of really interesting stuff in terms of putting together the geometry that you need to see, to aspire to what the truth is saying here. So I'm going to stop over for a moment and we'll see what you think. I like that bottom nose sketch of the nose cone. Yeah, I think this one has a lot of, I agree. This one has a lot of emphasis to it. And again, notice this nose cone piece, that could be a nice, maybe that's a solid piece. This would be all transparent, back to a promenade area and an entryway piece in behind here to come into the actual structure. And by the way, when I'm at it too, I'm really not having designated what this structure is going to be yet. To me, it might suit itself to being a very large displayer or a museum area or an exhibit hall of some sort. So we'll make that decision as we go here. These are just entry-level studies about what empathy does in the third dimension using paper for architecture. So a good choice here to begin. But again, hopefully, am I still communicating all right, clearly? I mean, I'm not trying to rush too much here. Really make sure that this thing really functions well for all of us involved. It's always to get a good start on this, because next week we'll move in and refine a little bit further, and we'll take it from there. So I'll hold on a moment while you make that decision. I appreciate your time and spending it with me here. It's really great to have you on board. Always is. Thank you. Yeah, then we're going back again. It really in the dull here, it just really begins to look at what happens, for example, when you begin to get around people, for example, like Frank Gehry and how he thought, how his process worked. And I've never forgotten that experience. And I've used it over the years, and it's just magical how it functions and works. So, hey, thanks very much, Terrace. Move along here. There was another variation on studies. There's another one here. There's another one on again, number one. Look at this guy. There's study number one. Look at that. Help just to stretch it even further. It goes back to what you said here about this guy here, and Terrace. That might have been a favorite, but I just took that advantage and went a little bit quicker with this thing and took that into account, and there she is right there. I mean, all of a sudden, just stretched that beauty and got a lot more fullness in this form. This piece underneath, kind of snuggling underneath the shape and doing some really interesting things with the forms and just looking at elevations just to get something down in terms of what the direction is going to become. This one was back to number 4. Let me find that shape here for a second. Number 2, 3. I think this was 4, I think. Nope, 3. Let me find number 4. And we'll get this up here on the board. Number 4. This goes back to the shape number 4, for example. The one down below, let me do this. This sketch down below was a variation This was a variation on number 4, and this first. And I think this. I'll go back to this for a moment. This one, from where we were with the one you just looked at, Terrace, where this guy had some character to it. It still looked a little clumsy into here. Can be adding the pieces on, trying to make more out of it than I have to. But I think going back to this guy, being very simplistic about it, it's 1 to 2 to 3. And it just seemed to stabilize the whole unit here. It just, I mean, a lot, and then this can be really intriguing in terms of what might be fun with this guy is to take this shape and begin to massage it a little bit further and go into plan view studies and maybe sections and see what that thing looks like. That's the idea behind number 4. Do you think this was interesting? Good? It's got a different approach to it, but I think you'll see some changes down the line here that might just kind of start looking at this. It'll look a little odd in through here, and I like the idea of the sky bridge and separating the shapes. Let's go back to this for a moment here. This is number 4 here. If you look at this shape, if I can get these on the same page here. No, not quite. No. Anyway, if you look at the shape, number 4 had this form to it coming in with this big parabolic curve. Then it had that big long platform and then a little connector here. So that portion became that. This portion became that. And then we added that tail out here. But it looked a little clumsy. So I thought, that's where we started with. Okay, but there's a massage area, a variation number 4. That's revising what you see here in the paper and then taking advantage of being a little bit more forthright with it and making some decisions that are very critical. So let's do this. Let's put that aside here for a moment. Put this in, all this together and keep these in organized fashion here. So, again, this is, variation on number 1 and a variation on number 4. So once I got those down, I think this one has some real character to it based on where we were from number 1, taking the evolution down the line here. Not to be redundant, but just taking the time to say, okay, let's look at these one more time. Even though they're sheer in the first pass I showed you, the first 4 plates, very geometric and very, very faceted. Now taking those facets and combining them into maybe soft and sharp. That's the beauty of being creative with it. That's the beauty of this whole dimension of architecture in the 3rd dimension. It gives us that flexibility. It allows us to see that a 2nd and 3rd and 4th time and really kind of tune in on it. So there we are. That's the plate here. Now let's go back. Next pass. Now, what do you think? These are variations. I think we're just about there. Yep. These are variations on, again, number 4. All of a sudden, everything changed. It just really got a lot more fluid in terms of where we were here. This is not a bad start. Let me just do this so I can kind of stack these up a little bit. Number 4 here was not a bad start. But I don't know if I really wasn't sold on the busyness of going on in here. I wanted to take that shape and really combine it and make it more dramatic. So that's that goes there. And then now look at this. There's number 4. Look, I'm changing that whole area, that whole shape. I'm really stretching it and pushing it up underneath. Maybe there's a bar here, and this is more of a plateau or a sharpness that goes inside the form. This cantilever comes out, can provide maybe a walkway or an observation panel of some sort. And then the last one, for example, again, going a lot more fresher with it. Just kind of, again, cleaning up the shape on top here. Again, stretching that, and again, now notice, this indication here tells me this whole thing is flush. This is recessed, or this is flush. This could be a really bold process in terms of developing a lot of glass forms into a cantilever. Again, this could be opened up again. And again, this whole idea could be like a garden of some sort. And again, the entryway, maybe an exhibit hall in here of some sort, whatever it ends up being. Futuristic. What do you think? Futuristic in a sense, positive or negative, Terrace? So hopefully, one way or the other. I can certainly understand both futuristic points of view. Is it positive in a sense, futuristic, or is it a little bit too much? Because some of the things that we're looking at from an architectural point of view now are really intriguing in terms of material usage, how things are being done and manufactured now. It just opens up a whole new opportunity of things to deal with. And again, one of the premises for that variation on number 4 that we saw here from the original empathy studies, the 3rd dimension studies, was fracture. But again, I still want to see it coming together as a fracture. But now this is one unit, and this is an auxiliary piece that attaches to it. But it looks more suited. So I'll wait here for your decision. What do you think? Coming together all right? And again, what's deceptive here in the elevation is that it could be a lot more fluid in terms of roundness and shape, and then again, back to counterpoint. All those things we can take care of as we go down the line here of this program as it goes from one level to another, from one stage to another. So If you don't mind, just what do you think in terms of futuristic, plus or no? Good futuristic or not futuristic? Sci-fi. That's a tremendous description, very scientific. And again, there's a lot of architectural examples out there in the universe today, around the globe, that are extremely futuristic and almost very sci-fi-like. Mylin does some things that are absolutely amazing in terms of being very out of a science fiction novel or a film. So let me ask you a very direct question, though. But do you think this is a merit to pursue, if possible? Because it is out of the box, and that's what we're looking at here. That's why this empathy stuff is so powerful. It takes you away from the normal into the abstract, and it forces you to begin make really some solid decisions. So what do you think, Terrace? Is it worthwhile? Not necessarily positive. That's good. We'll have to see how it comes out, huh? So let me go back to this. You're more in favor with something like this nature here, right? That was one you kind of selected as being interesting, in terms of interesting. Could be interesting in a sense too. This could be fun. I can look at both areas here and begin to make some decisions. And while I'm at it too, going through the entire process here, there's nothing here set in stone in terms of, these are just first blush passes of how this whole thing, it's not my personal, oh, that's okay, that's fine. Good to know that in terms of where you want to go with it. It's a very, very abstract piece of information here. And I think, it's worthwhile taking a look at it. It'd be a little bit of a stretch, and if it's yay, great. If it's nay, then terrific. I appreciate the insight above all else, Antares. But I think going back to just taking a look at the overall view of today's presentation, it was getting started with, for example, change of, yeah, and I think that's going to be a lot. That's true of all of these studies, by the way, too, Antares. Each one of these are strictly in elevation. Now, throughout the whole process, we can go back and look at all 6 we first started with, and then the variations on theme, and begin to move those into some sort of real quick little thumbnail perspective sketches that might change the character of this thing even more so. So that's the plan from now on through the next few weeks in terms of taking these elevations, looking at them again, refining the goods and bads, and getting them down to some simple statements, and then begin to generate thumbnail sketches on what they look like in perspective, like overheads or plan views, and those kinds of things. And I can't stress enough that the whole intent for today was to introduce the third dimension of architecture using paper sculpture. It was just a process of thinking. Now that we've got the process down, now we can start to modify the process and make adjustments that are much more applicable to some really good, solid architectural sketch work. So does that make sense to you? Hopefully? Good? If you change your mind on the plan views or some of the other views, that's great. If not, we're still going to go full statement, because I respect your insight, Antares. Really respect your insight. So let me get these out of the way, and I'll just kind of wait for some conversation here to wrap it all up, and we'll see what we've got for coming into next week. There it is. I still think this guy is intriguing. There's something about this one right here. It's not a favorite, but it has some potential. Something about this guy right here for number 1 makes a huge amount of sense. Now, it's radically different from the paper sculpture. But again, isn't that part of the cause? Is to take that paper sculpture, analyze it, refine it, and then settle it. So that's what we're looking at here in terms of hoping. And again, this will change again. This might change too. I might take a look at this again. Maybe. Oh, that could be. I'm gonna go back and look at this one more time for next week. All of them, we'll take a look at them. Just some of the ones I thought were really interesting. Just interesting stuff I'd all put together. Interesting. I think this will hopefully be a benefit to you. Again, because your talent level and your skill set is amazingly strong. And every time you open up a new box of thinking processes, hopefully you begin to take that and tailor it to your information and what you do from the point of view of your design story from day to day. And I'm going to go back to something you mentioned some weeks ago. I was really pleased to hear that your manager called you aside and said, hey, you're doing some great work. I complimented you for the work you're doing on his behalf. I think that's exciting, very exciting, Tara. So congratulations to you. And we want to keep that moving with things that you're going to be developing as you advance in your career here. So really neat stuff, guys. So in closing, and Terrence, any overall comments about what you saw here today? I mean, I want this to become, my desire is for this to be a real cornerstone of thinking experiences and problem solving that is outside the box, yet we bring it back in and make something completely unique into it when it's all said and done. Much like the product design piece we did. Oh, by the way, we're still waiting for some input. They've made some decisions on the product design we worked on, And we're going to take a look at that, and we'll bring some feedback on that once we get the news. So anybody, what do you think, Enter? It's closing it up for us here. Nice job. This is fun. It's a different way, a different exercise, but a very vital exercise. And again, like I said at the beginning of the stream, it does two things for us. It opens up the window of opportunity. It refines our vocabulary. It expands it. There's nothing greater than that, because then again, you can't be predicted. Every time you do something for a client, it's a new approach, a different set of circumstances. So they cannot predict what you're after all about. So, any closing remarks or address before we set it all up? And we get rolling here. Again, empathic architecture in the third dimension. And just seeing your paper stuff, I really appreciate the. Yeah, the 3D method is great. And again, Antares, just to make sure, this is not just for architecture. You can use this for product design, interior space, automobile design. I've used all these things at paper sculptures for things of that nature. So it's universal, and it solves a lot of problems. So I really appreciate, number one, I appreciate you being on board here with me every Wednesday. Your valuable input is really, really greatly respected. And again, I can't thank you enough for the kind remarks you made about my wife's situation. That was a very intense week, 2 weeks actually, and everything got back into normal. So it's, again, slowly improving and doing much better. But we'll carry the banner here and keep this thing moving. Next week, I'm going to take some of the information here and look at them again and go through and next Wednesday and add phase 2 by taking some of the input we got here today and begin to refine it down. And maybe by next week, we'll have an opportunity to say, okay, maybe A, B, and C, pick 3 directions and begin to develop those and begin to take it down to a real finite solution in terms of getting this architectural program squared away. And while I'm on that subject matter too, I've been, in the course of time over the last 3 weeks, I've been putting together some agendas, for example, doing part design, back to some automotive work, some product design work, some interior space work. So I've got a whole list of things we're going to put together on the program from week to week here as time moves on. And I want to show you too, next week I'll have some permission. I did a couple more finished pieces for Corvettes of Carlisle, some Grand Sport pieces I'll show very quickly on the news, on the network next week, hopefully. So all the best to you guys. Thanks so much for the time taken today. It's always a joy to have you guys on board. And above all else, why don't you take a moment here, if you have any notes or any concerns on Terrace, maybe some things you've seen about yays and some direction for me to kind of look at and analyze, feel free to drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. It'd be really great to hear from you, as it always is. And those of you who might be watching later on, feel free to do the same. Offer me a note of encouragement or else yays and nays at jim@drcontrast.com. Take a moment to look at my website, drcontrast.com, and I think tomorrow we might have a meeting here to kind of refresh the website a little bit. We've been talking for a long time to add some things to it and make it more and more manageable and add some features to it. We're going to do that, hopefully start with a series of meetings tomorrow to get that taken care of. So that will go well. And Ben, once again, it's always great to have you on board. No problem sharing the knowledge at all. It's not mine to begin with. I just need to share it with great people like yourself. And I'm glad you're on board, and I wish you all the very best throughout the course of the week. We'll see you next Wednesday, for example, gang. And I always never forget to do this, and especially this week, in light of what we've just gone through as a family. Always, always, always remember to never forget to dare to be great, because you are. Thank you, gang. We'll see you next Wednesday, and we'll keep the phase 2 with this architectural and the third dimension program rolling. So all the best and take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.